Welcome to another episode of Data Gurus. This is Sima Vasa, your host. I'm so excited to have what an amazing team of professionals that are very focused on data quality, and we're going to have a really in-depth conversation as some of the things that we're seeing from different parts of the ecosystem. So, with that, I'm going to let each guest introduce themselves, since I probably will not do justice to all the depth and breadth that everybody brings to the table. Dinah, I will start with you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Seema. And my title is Managing Director at Escalent Group. And Escalent Group, for those of you who are not aware, includes Escalent, C Space, and Holland Partners.
Awesome. And John?
Yeah, I'm Jon Kay. I work on the client side at Intuit. I work on QuickBooks, so on our B2B team specifically. Prior to Intuit, I was at LRW, became material for about 10 years.
Cool. Everybody loves QuickBooks. Bob?
I'm Bob Fawson, co-founder and CEO at Data Quality Co-op, and spent 15 years building panels at SSI and Dynata prior to that.
Awesome. And Steve?
I'm Steve Snell. I'm head of research at Rep Data. I'm a survey methodologist by background, and I work on Research Defender, which is our fraud prevention platform at here at Rep Data.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we have a really nice mix of people here that have different lenses as it relates to data quality and some of the challenges that we're facing. I'll say challenges and opportunities. I'm an optimist. Um, and I wanted to start with you, John. You're on the client side. You're in it, and you are driving, providing insights to your internal stakeholders. What are you seeing as it relates to data quality?
Yeah, so I think maybe just a little context or
Sure.
background on how we do it. We talk to QuickBooks customers and we talk to small businesses who don't have QuickBooks. So for our customers, we don't use panels. We use our internal verified customer database, customer lists. Um, have not had problems with those. Generally, like data quality when we're going to our verified customers has been great.
Hmm.
Then we compare it, when we want to talk to prospects, which we often do because we're a public company that's looking to grow like every other one. We talk to prospects, we go to panels. Um, I've been here 4 years. Um, Even in that short time, have really seen data quality fall for the prospect work that we're doing. And it got to a point where I sort of became our internal evangelist, person who's just like constantly beating the drum and annoying all my teammates about what's going on with data quality. Because maybe it was 2 years ago, um, I did something like 3 or 4 studies where I paid for prospect data, got the data back, got reports back from the vendors, and it was so atrocious. It did not pass the smell test that I just ended up removing it completely. Just
Mm.
prospect data I paid for. This is important to talk to customers and prospects. And I told my stakeholders, we're just doing customers because this data is just not good. Which then led to many other steps. I don't know if you want me to go and explain them all now, or later, but that was really the start of it. Just getting data back, looking at it and saying like, I just can't use this.
I do want to come back to some of the solutions. Obviously, you guys have to grow as a company. You have to figure out how to talk to prospects, but I'm sure you've come up with some creative solutions. But let's come back to you and talk a little bit more about that. And one question I want to clarify is: are you doing your own research, or are you hiring an agency to do the research for you for prospects?
Uh, I think maybe like 95% agencies.
Okay, all right, cool. Dinah, I know data quality and, kind of a systemic approach to it through the value chain has been something that you really championed at Escalent. Can you talk a little bit more about as to what you've been seeing as it relates to the challenges around data quality and what I know you have a big vision in terms, not a big vision, you're getting there, but a vision in terms of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, Gosh, I resonate with the things that John is saying in terms of you see things and
Yeah.
they look fishy and you have to dig into them and kind of get to what the underpinnings of that are. Um, you know, Overall in our industry, we are living in an age of more sophisticated threats.
Mhm.
Um, that might be true in our world in every place in our world, but
Yeah,
as it relates to market research,
yeah.
it's definitely the case, right? Technology evolves, and with that, the threats and how people use technology evolve typically to make money because of some of the incentives are pretty lucrative. And so as we at Escalent think about data quality, it's really about preparing for battle. And
Mm,
in doing so, you can't just have one shield, right? It's like
um,
taking a knife to a gunfight or something, right? Like you can't just have a shield. You need to have multiple layers of protection. And so that's what we do. We do that at multiple stages along our entire process, everywhere from how we partner with our vendors to our sample vendors, in
mhm.
particular, who do we partner with and what are their techniques? What are the
Yep.
techniques we're putting into our surveys? We very much have a technology and human in the loop approach. So yes, we're applying all of the, common technologies like data fingerprinting and otherwise. We're putting new things into our surveys like invisible questions that humans can't see, but bots will detect, right? So we've got all kinds of steps associated with what's happening in survey to mark hard strikes and soft strikes. Looking at behavioral things like are people copy and pasting? We know that tends to be more bot type behavior. But we've got, all of these multiple layers going on. And then we also have human checking going on. And it's just taking kind of that much
Yeah.
um, to to catch all the things that are happening. And at the end of the day, it's really about data integrity and being able to protect the results and make sure that you can trust the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That
Right? I
makes
mean,
sense.
we're only as good as our data, and our data drives the insights that we provide to brands.
100%.
Yeah.
I wanna ask a question to Steve and to Bob. I mean, Bob, wanna give you a moment. You started your company seeing there was a need as it related to, providing a solution, or a platform to improve data quality. Can you just talk a little bit about that and that I don't wanna scare you, but you kind of risked your career and said, "I feel so passionate about this.
Okay,
I'm gonna
I'm
start."
glad I'm not the only one who thinks about that. Thanks for the question, Seema. I think of it in a couple of ways. You know, the things John is noticing and the work that's being done across the ecosystem to add multiple layers of detection, I think, are critical. But I also think we have a coordination problem,
Okay.
and that's what we're trying to solve. So I think about it in this way: like every time people get together to talk about quality, just visit LinkedIn. It's always negative. There's lots of data about how quality goes wrong.
Right.
And there's lots of cheap talk about how quality goes right, and some data too. And so I think, with the rise of programmatic sampling, which has been great for cost and data availability, and it's fueled the growth of a lot of our industry, there's been a massive rise in complexity. And AI and synthetic audiences are going to increase that complexity. And what we're trying to create is something conceptually like a credit score that follows respondents and suppliers around. And so whenever a respondent comes to your survey, you have an a priori idea about how much you should trust them. Just like if any one of us walked into a bank, they wouldn't know us perfectly and they have their proprietary risk models and their own approach to the market, but they know generally how risky we are on day one. And so I think as we look to the future, programmatic sampling is not going away. Like too much good has happened. Synthetic audiences are not going away. We have to stop trying to solve quality on every survey exclusively. We have to keep trying to solve it in every survey, but also have more transparency across companies, across surveys in a way that is that continues to protect everyone's IP, and that's kind of the idea behind how we're thinking of quality.
Awesome. It makes sense, right? If and I guess the challenge there, not the challenge, but what is required is an industry to participate in sharing that data to be able to create a common repository of knowledge that people can access,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
and before everybody runs at the end of the call, I'll ask everyone to commit to sharing their data with me real quick. So get it all on record.
You've done lots of research. You've been in the industry for a long time. Um, there's varying degrees in terms of how people contextualize data quality today. Some people are like, oh my gosh, the roof is burning, the building's falling down. Other people are like, I actually think it's improved. It's doing really well. And these narratives are being built. And I just love to get your perspective as to where are we as it relates to data quality.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'll ask everybody, but I'm curious. I know you've done some research on research as well, and so your perspective is highly valuable too.
Oh, thanks. Data quality is incredibly complex, a construct,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people really want to fixate on fraud. But data quality is a function of at least two things, which is fraud, but also inattention, stuff that we've known about and worried about for like 80 years, longer than any of us have been alive. We've been worried about data quality, but it used to be much more about speeding and straight lining and just, inattentive respondents who are satisficing, they're just not doing a very good job of answering our questions. And now, in the last really probably 10 years, maybe 15, we've been a lot more worried about fraud. But our tool set of how to identify fraudsters still looks like we're looking for speeding and straight lining and those things that are really not about fraud and inattention. And a lot of the research on research that I've done has shown that, yeah, there's some overlap. I call it the ugly fraud. It's about 10% of respondents in a typical consumer study that I see are ugly fraud, but a much larger proportion, about a quarter of respondents in some studies are good-looking fraud. And so there are people who are, to Dinah's point, more sophisticated than ever. They're using tech in really, cutting edge ways. Every piece of technology that fraudsters are using to defraud us and steal our money has a legitimate purpose. A lot of times it's for software testing. But now
Right.
we've got that same technology in the hands of bad actors, and they're using it to create multiple instances of a survey so they can take lots of surveys at a time or, more sophisticated ways to hide who they are or where they are. And so I think that's the really hard part is we need to think about data quality as a function of fraud and inattention and understand where they overlap and more often than not where they don't. So this
Mm.
good-looking fraud that we need to root out, even if it feels nice, it looks all right, and then all of a sudden all of our KPIs are off and we don't know why. It's because of the good-looking fraud.
And is a good-looking fraud increasing? Is it stabilizing? Are we because where there's we're combating it? I won't use the battle analogy Dinah had, but
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the good-looking fraud is when you ask about a brand in an open end and you get a Wikipedia response,
right,
and you're
yeah,
like, "That's looks good, but it looks too good," right?
yeah, yeah.
Truly, I mean, it's really about people using tools in ways that, like, that's normally okay. I mean, there's even a debate right now in some academic circles because Dinah, you referenced copy paste, and I typically don't want respondents copying and pasting. And I went to an academic conference and made that assertion, and I had several people tell me, well, that's fine. Because we all use ChatGPT to help us refine our language. And I
Mm,
thought, what a weird thing. People are totally cool with GPT responses. And they said, well, maybe a good respondent is using GPT, or maybe a good respondent is using copy pasting. I don't feel comfortable with that threshold in
right.
my surveys. I don't want people doing that. But there are other, parts of the industry, especially in academia, where maybe they think that's okay. I don't want the Wikipedia response to unaided brand awareness.
I mean, it's a challenge, honestly, because I always think about like, what do people do in their personal life, right? We're dealing with security and like 50 factors of authentication, and it's so hard to remember every password, but anyway, that's another problem. And then using content and refining it through, other AI tools, like that's normal behavior to a certain degree. And then we say in the surveys, we're like, no, we don't want that. So it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because that might be their natural way to respond. Not the good looking fraud, but the people who are actually responding to surveys in a way that seems authentic. Um, John, okay, so you crossed the chasm. You're like, I'm not going to talk to any prospects anymore. We know that you couldn't. That we haven't even talked. I'm assuming you couldn't sustain that, and you had to figure out how to talk to prospects in some way and get their feedback. Is that a fair assertion?
That is a fair assertion.
Okay.
I I would say I crossed the chasm on certain studies, but
Yeah. Okay.
yes, no, we will not. We, we're still interested in customer growth, so yes,
Yes. Yeah.
still doing our best to talk to prospects. Yeah.
So tell us what you did. Like you had to reorient yourself a bit, right? You said for a while you're like, okay, no more prospects. Came back and said, how am I going to get this information? How do you think about it, and how's your approach changed?
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, it wasn't we're not going to talk to prospects anymore, or I'm not on my studies. It was, oh, this data came back, it's unusable.
Got it.
I'm not going to show
For
this to
that study.
reporters
Yeah.
and get laughed out of the room and lose my
Yeah.
credibility as a researcher.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was I in some senses, I was starting with what I knew. I was aware of some that there are premium B2B suppliers. So
Right.
start by asking vendors like, can we use some of these? What will it cost? Can you give me some options? Um, and so yeah, so looking at, seeing the costs of going to, let's say, traditional panels
Yeah.
versus a premium panel, it's pretty stark.
Yes.
Um, and I mean, I guess maybe I wasn't totally shocked, but definitely sticker shock if I'm then bringing this to people who are going to be saying like, "Hey, you need to pay more money for this study or
Right.
that study." So that's where I started, and then it became just a general exploration. I think a really big thing for me was going to the Quarks conference in LA. I guess it was earlier this year. That's where I met Steve and saw him present, and I talked to all the people who were there from Rep Data for a couple of hours. And then brought Steven to talk to my team and other teams at Intuit. Um, so, it was learning what else is out there. It's like, okay, so there's this fraud detection. And and then that turned into, okay, let me talk to all of our vendors and see what are all of our vendors doing? Are they using these tools? Are they still, when I started at LRW 15 years ago, we were checking for straight liners, we were checking for speeders, we were looking for conflicting answers. And it's like, it's clearly not enough anymore, right?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think the good looking fraud is a good example of that. It's like we have vendors who say, you know what, we're just as good going line by line than a tool like Rep Data. And like I've been in research a long time. I'm in operations. I take a lot of pride in the fact that I go through line by line. But it's like, look, you went through line by line, and now you're giving me data that says 90% of people who don't even have QuickBooks are using a service offered only to our subscribers, that we know only 3% of our actual subscribers use.
Got
So
it.
the line by line isn't
Yeah.
adding up, right? Like, uh, so, just talking to all our key vendors, getting a breakdown of what they use. Um, Frankly, just not people who aren't using a tool like Rep Data. And, we don't say you have to use Rep Data, but, tools like it. If you're
Mhm.
not using it, not
Mhm.
for a new vendor, I'm not bringing you in. For a
Yeah.
vendor that we've used and like, okay, I'll use you for customer only uh,
Mhm.
work from now on. And it's, just really continuing to gather that information. There's a lot of experimentation. Like, when I talk to some vendors about it, they're like, hey, you know what? We can bring you into the process during a survey or during, while we're in field and show you what we're doing. And then so I followed up with a vendor on that, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And this was a couple months later. They're like, oh, well, what do you want to see? Like, what would be helpful? Whatever. It's like, so a lot of it's like trying to figure out. It's like, I don't know. You offered that you would
Yeah.
show me something. And some vendors are coming back with like, yeah, we removed 25% of our people, of people who came in through this tool. And other people are showing me like, oh, they had good answers up front, but they're like, we removed 3 people through CAPTCHA. And it's like, well, that's really not getting it done. And I see when I look at your data versus other vendors' data that even though you both have a tool, it's not working as well. So okay, like so now I'm seeing, okay, this vendor I should probably put aside for prospect data, and this vendor I can rely on more. Um, and I mean, it's constant trial and error, constant just like asking questions, constant pushback, and I don't feel like I've come even close to solving it. Um,
Sure.
but it's just like every study is sort of another data point and you know information into, okay, how can we do it a little better, and who can we trust, and who can't we? And I don't mean that in a bad way, like they're doing anything nefarious, but just like they clearly have not figured it out in an acceptable way.
If you want a learning lunch, we'll be happy to do one. We'll do one for anybody. So we do them all the time. We do them for Insights Association as well. So if that's helpful to you, because there's so many creative techniques out there, and there's one that we're doing right now with AI technology where we're showing images and like an image of ice sculpture dolphins and asking what are these dolphins doing, right? And an AI bot will say, "Oh, these are dolphins frolicking in the sun, playing in the ocean," but a human will say, "Those are ice sculptures of dolphins," right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's thinking how to creatively use, all of these different layers, but also AI being one of them to combat because it's like a strategic issue, but the solutions are very tactical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of the struggle with that is that like most places will tell me what they're doing. And they'll say, we're using this, we're using that. They'll say, we're using AI. And then it's like, I'm hearing the same thing from everybody. And it's even like these panels that I know are getting us bad data on every study. They have this long list of all these things they're doing. And it's like, okay. It's again, like I'm seeing the sum of the parts and it's not
Yeah.
adding up, or the whole isn't adding up to the sum of all these parts. So it's a continual challenge.
I commend you on your curiosity to keep asking those questions, asking vendors to like talk about their solutions. And I might go as far as saying I don't know, and maybe you guys could chime in here, but I think John might be the anomaly in terms of an end client and its curiosity to really hone into those details. Again, talk to lots of people, but my sense is that you're probably, if there's a spectrum, you're at the very top of the spectrum in terms of digging in and really understanding what is being delivered to you. And I'm curious to hear from Steve and Bob and Dinah your perspective on, how many, and this is not criticism because clients have fires to put out every single day and they
Right.
got their own stuff going on. But how many questions are you getting as it relates to data quality as it relate specifically from brands?
I mean, uh, sorry,
Go
Steve.
ahead, Bob,
Didn't
please.
mean to step on your toes. Yeah, it's interesting because I find I'm having in-depth conversations very frequently,
Okay.
but John's story would follow a common arc. It's a
Yeah.
big problem, whether it's a decision or data that clearly wasn't right that led to the curiosity. And one of the I love this panel because there's so many perspectives on it. One of the open questions I have is how can we who are downstream of the clients better communicate about data quality in a way that's proactive and helpful? Because whether it's dolphin ice sculptures, which I love, that's hilarious, or thinking about like respondents pass through router, it's like it feels so complicated.
Mhm.
And so what's what's the way beyond clients having big problems and
Yep.
earning their PhD in data quality that we could better communicate as an ecosystem? Because it
Yep.
feels like there's a real gap there.
Yeah, I agree. It's heavy too. It's like, okay, let me tell you everything, and it's not. The messaging is really hard to communicate because you want to share um, the work, right? You want to improve it, but then you know that the client has a million other things to do, and it's almost like there's this fine balance of, okay, you got it. I don't need to know more, but until there's a big problem then that kind of opens up everything. Steve, you're going to add to that.
Well, I would just say that John's story, really echoing Bob's experience, is pretty
Mm,
common.
mhm,
There are a lot of clients, brand side researchers, who are looking at their data and it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. A
mm.
lot of times it has to do with like market landscape questions.
Yeah,
They're like, I know who the leaders are and I know what they're
right.
known for. And these data don't jive with that. And so they'll go back to their vendor and they'll say, clean the data, and they'll clean the data and they'll come back and it still doesn't work and clean it some more. And it's because, the response itself is just one signal. And there's
Yes.
all these other signals that really need to be collected at the time of data collection. And if they're not collected, they're sort of gone, right? We don't
Right.
have all that metadata, all that paradata about how the response is collected, then you're kind of, as my kids say, you're cooked.
Right.
There's no way to recover that once the data are collected. So that's where, layering from the
Mhm.
beginning. Like we have signals that are the survey response, but we want to layer on who are these people? Where are they
Yeah.
coming from? What tech are they bringing to bear on the survey? One of the things that we measure is how many times have we seen this respondent in the Research Defender ecosystem in the past 24 hours, right? So we have
Right.
all of these different sort of paradata, metadata layered on top of their
Mhm.
response. And then we can give more of this composite picture. I share Bob's concern that, I think sometimes we're so fixated on data quality
Mm.
that we're going to sort of subject even our best respondents to these really hard things.
I know.
Yeah.
We really
Yeah,
put them through the gauntlet, and it's like we got to be careful because there's a respondent experience that matters at the end. And if
I
we
totally agree.
give survey respondents a bad experience, even the good people are going to give us bad data. So it's
Yeah.
really balancing how much of this can be done passively, how much of
Mhm.
it can be done completely silently so the respondent doesn't know what's happening. There's times where we have to intervene. I think the ice dolphins is amazing, but like we have to balance that with like other stuff that is quiet in the background. Otherwise, the respondents are all gonna get tired of jumping through our hoops.
Mhm. Mhm. I did the CEO Pulse survey. I can't even get CEOs in our industry to answer a 5-minute survey without saying, "This time we did something creative, we gave an incentive for charity." But, like, to the point, we're asking respondents to take surveys and doing all these tasks before you get into a survey.
Yeah,
It's really important that user experience is critical, and, it's also making sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
totally.
Somebody could
Oh,
be
good work happens every day. That's the part that's easy to forget. And I just to add to your point, Steve, I am a bit of a masochist and take surveys on occasion. And
Totally.
just last week, I went in. I is a new platform. Somebody I met. They optimized for respondent experience. They choose all the best surveys for respondents. So I started there. I went through 4 routers at each one, and they were all great. Actually, this is not a negative comment. It's more each one had a comprehensive quality management program. There was a AI prompted open end question. There was some sort of visual recognition exercise, and there was some close ended questions. They were all good, actually. But by the time you go through that 4 times, I think we exacerbate our problem. And so maybe the one stakeholder that isn't here, I'm glad you brought it up, is the respondents themselves. And if
yeah,
we over detect, it's a it's an equivalent problem.
yeah.
I wanted to bring it back to the
Alright.
brands, uh,
Yes.
just because brands do care. They care a
Mhm.
lot. And if I think back to, the founding team of True Sample, well, we were able to take that to market with the partnership of Procter and Gamble, General Mills, Microsoft, and Coca-Cola, all of which care a lot about the research results. And we're seeing things like concept scores that they couldn't trust to launch new products, all the way
Mhm.
through tracking work that was having impact on executive compensation, and they couldn't trust the research.
Yep.
So brands care. We work with many of the biggest brands in the world, and at the end of the day, they want us to solve the problem for them. They are trying to solve the problem of the marketplace, the economy, the
Right.
tariffs, the
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things, because they're delivering products to consumers and businesses, and that's what they're in the business of doing. We're in the business of providing
Yeah.
trustworthy insights that can, and so it's our business to solve that. And anyway, I just wanted to say that because I do think brands care, but I also think it's our industry, to protect, and it's our problem to solve. And clients are solving it different ways. We do, like I said, the learning lunches, but we then go systematically through all the programs and consistently, put in these new
Mm.
techniques so that these layers are in, and to the best of our ability, we try to partner with clients so that they're part of the decision making,
Mhm.
as what tactics we're putting into place. So,
Yeah.
but the other thing that's going on, and I'll just say this because we're also a communities company, is that if you can't trust the panels, you're going to build your own communities. And
Mhm.
I see that from that side
Starting to
too.
see that.
And
Yeah.
so, there's a time and a place for
Mhm.
sample and B2B sample and communities, but we see that as well. When you can't trust the sample that you're getting, you're going to build your own solution.
Yeah, I wanna be clear, I know brands care for sure, and I think everybody has their own like, to your point, brands are dealing with scenario planning of multiple things that are happening in their company, supply chain, so on and so forth, but if there's true partnership, then there's, an understanding that the agency or the panel provider is gonna solve qual or do the best of their ability for quality, and then have this ongoing dialogue in terms of what's happening, and not necessarily putting the problem in the lap of a brand or any other stakeholder. So I agree with you, Dinah, on that
Well,
one.
I mean, it's why I'm so excited about what Bob's building, honestly. I mean, Bob knows that I want a report card in all those deliverables for those
Yeah,
brands, right? So it's super
yeah,
transparent. And every project we do, they can just see here's the
yeah.
quality and where it came from. And so hopefully we can all work together to get to that world, because I think our industry is the only industry that doesn't have, you think about Uber or hotels,
Mhm.
right?
There's
There's
self-rating because ratings, yeah.
rider in the Uber gets a score and the Uber driver gets a score. Both
Mhm.
sides get a score, and for whatever reason, we haven't gotten there yet. But
And I
kind
always
of
regret
yeah.
accepting a driver with a low score. It never turns out well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think, and that goes back to ease of communication, Bob, that you were talking about, is to be able to easily say good quality, check out, look at these scores, which could at least start the conversation, make it a little easier. I know we are close to time. I want to ask each of you to share one takeaway you want listeners to, well, after listening to this podcast, what you would want them to take away as it relates to data quality. I'll start with you, Steve.
Well, thank you. I data quality is a layered problem, truly. And so I think that any solution has to be layered. It's pre-survey, it's in-survey, it's post-survey. I mean, pre-survey, I encourage everyone to use fraud prevention software. Obviously, I work for a company that does fraud prevention software, but everyone should be using some sort of fraud prevention, truly. In the survey, we want to be kind to respondents. We want to optimize their experience as much as possible. We
Mhm.
want to measure their attention, though, as well, in the most gentle ways possible. We want to make sure that we are monitoring survey quality after, but we still need to clean data at the end. So I really think about data quality. It begins before the survey and it ends after the survey. but we really need a holistic approach because it's not just about fraud. It's not just about inattention. It's about their intersection and also where they don't. And that's
Mhm,
going to require a researcher's attention, the full life cycle of the research.
mhm. Awesome, thank you. Bob?
I think there's lots of reasons for optimism, actually. I love the speed at which our industry is changing. I think the product that we sell is knowledge about things that we can't see on our own.
Mhm.
There's never ending demand for that. And I'm optimistic when I hear John's journey. I'll repeat your word, John, irritating or annoying people inside the company to pay attention to data quality. I think there's a general increase in interest of getting it right or getting it better. Even though our baseline is good, there's lots of good work that happens every day. And so I think even conversations like these are helpful and I think we should balance the concern with a sense of optimism and action and doing new things, and we'll figure it out. There's lots of good growth ahead for this space.
Awesome, thank you. John?
Um, I have so many thoughts, but I think the main thing that I just want to acknowledge is that this is uncomfortable. Like, this is an uncomfortable topic. And I think Steve and Bob pushed back on you a little bit, Seema, but I would agree with you that I am on the kind of the freakish end of the spectrum in terms of you know, client side researchers and the attention that I do
Mm,
put on this. It is easy to, and I know Bob's written a lot about incentives in the industry, but um it is easy to put your head in the sand and say, like, I was hired to work within certain budgets to do research. I will hire companies so I can do that research and do my job. And I am closer to this data than anyone else. And as long as it doesn't come in too crazy, I can put a good face on it. Um, and so it's uncomfortable and it's easy to just sort of go along to get along. But it's like it's very clear that we're up against this point where we're gonna hit a point where that's just really not gonna work anymore. And I think in terms of like one takeaway that I would want to give people, it's like a a start by just asking the questions at least, like, you're working with vendors, you are a vendor, ask these questions about what they're doing. Really, put the pressure on to create some incentives for people to change, for people to do different things, for people to prove to you that they're doing it right, and it's not lip service, and they're not doing it the way we were doing it 20 years ago. Um and just, the more I feel like the more it can be brought to people's attention, the more we can talk about it, the more likely we are to make progress and sort of start forcing progress a little bit. Because I really have seen that it's easy to just be like, well, I got $50,000 for this study, so here's what I can do with $50,000, and I want to do a conjoint, so I want somebody who can give me a ton of sample cheap, and but really, it's really to what end? So I guess ask the questions is my.
awesome, thank you, John. Dinah?
Yeah, I like what John's saying because it's about collaboration. And I always love to collaborate. And I think solving the problem for all of us is somewhere between people, process, and technology. And,
Mhm.
do the people know how to implement the tactics? Are the tactics being implemented consistently? Are you using both technology solutions and people solutions to ultimately come up with your best in practice solution? Those are my hopes and dreams for all of us. I would say my question to leave with is why haven't we solved the problem? I think it's a very solvable problem. But I think that potentially folks feel that their data quality is some kind of a differentiator for them, and so it becomes a secret
Mm,
sauce. And, I mean, that's why I'm willing to share all of our capabilities. Our company generally willy is willing to share because our secret sauce is more about our analytics and our data science
mhm.
and our AI technologies to support those things in the future, our communities. So, we believe our products and services are a differentiator. And to me, the data quality techniques are table stakes. And
Mhm.
so, that we should all have and we should democratize across the industry. So, I would leave with why. Why haven't we solved this?
Yeah, I love that too. I'll add in here. I'll say, I think sometimes we look for silver bullets, and I think this is a game of inches. And it's if we can work together and ensure that we learn together, similar to what you guys are all saying, I think we can really drive these results. But it's asking the questions, it's being curious, and you can't ignore the questions once the genie's out of the bottle. So I think it's great that we're doing this conversation and other initiatives in the industry that are shedding light on that as well. So with that, I want to thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Seema.
Matt.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.